Hello, my name is Michael Logushkin. Today, I'd like to share a true example of perseverance preserved, San Francisco's recovery from the 1906 earthquake. On April 18, 1906 at 5:12 a.m., the unthinkable happened in San Francisco, a 7.9 earthquake that caused widespread damage. The quake sparked fires that burned for days and devastated most of the city, costing residents and insurance companies millions of dollars. While San Francisco's residents watched in horror, city officials and the military responded immediately. Without waiting for approval, General Frederick Funston deployed Presidio soldiers in an attempt to save the city. Mayor Eugene Schmitz issued an emergency proclamation designed to discourage looting and prevent additional fires. By the following day, news of the quake had reached as far as Bermuda, where a local newspaper published a front-page story. As the scale of the disaster became clear, aid poured into San Francisco. This thank you note was written by the governor of New York to the New York Chamber of Commerce, thanking them for their fundraising efforts. The Sacramento Masonic Lodge contributed over $1,500 to San Francisco's relief. Even theaters got in on the act. Sacramento's Clooney Theater held a benefit performance for San Francisco within a week of the quake. In San Francisco, the first few days after the earthquake were especially rough. The injured received care in makeshift field hospitals, and families burned out of their homes camped wherever they could. With the help of federal, local, and charitable entities, this soon changed. Informal camping gave way to large refugee settlements. Groups like the American Red Cross provided meals to thousands, and eventually wooden refugee shacks took the place of tents. The devastation was so extreme that some thought it might be best to give up on the city altogether, but not San Franciscans. Their can-do attitude was evident in artistic depictions of and poems about the city, as well as in the day-to-day decisions that they made following the disaster. This man, whose image is preserved in the Hamilton Henry Dobbins scrapbooks, part of our collections here at the California State Library's California History Room, was clearly bent on staying. He reopened his boot repair business as soon as he could. Rebuilding San Francisco was not an easy task, and recruitment got underway early on. Much of the early post-quake work consisted of salvage and rubble clearing. Scores of men spent their days cleaning the mortar off of bricks for later reuse. This was such a common task that it appeared on postcards. San Franciscans cleared what couldn't be salvaged via especially constructed railroad tracks. Reopening happened simultaneously with cleanup. By May 1906, enough businesses had reopened, albeit in alternative locations, its residents needed a new city directory. City newspapers such as the San Francisco Examiner resumed publication. The physical banks also reopened remarkably early. Albert Dressler, a photographer who documented the city's rebuilding process, noted that by reopening quickly, banks like the California Safe Deposit and Trust Company encouraged residents, investors, and businesses to stand by the city. Depending on which street you walked along, by 1907 you might not have known that the earthquake and fire had taken place. Main thoroughfares like Van Ness Avenue flourished, but there was definitely still work to be done, so much so that in May of 1907 the city held a large-scale cleanup day, encouraging local residents to clean up the remaining debris. Within just a few years, San Francisco was not only rebuilt, but ready to party. The first major celebration was the Portola Festival, held in 1909 and again in 1913, but these were merely rehearsals. The opening of the Panama Canal provided the perfect excuse for a true blowout, and the 1915 Panama Pacific International Exposition filled the bill. Promoters lobbied heavily for San Francisco's selection as the Expo City, and after winning, got to work throwing a party the world would remember with elegant buildings, exotic attractions, and showcases of the latest technology. San Francisco was back with a roar. Even in the middle of rebuilding, San Franciscans took time to document their experiences. They did so via photo albums and scrapbooks such as the ones put together by Dobbin and Dressler. They established monuments to the event, such as portals of the past, wrote memoirs, and even published books on the disaster, including this one, which the publisher advertised with lurid sales samples. The State Library, in turn, collected and preserved many of these items, including the materials in the slideshow. And each of these items, as in the events that occurred, the resilience of San Franciscans in the face of the unthinkable shines through as a true example of perseverance preserved.